Opioids help. When you're in severe pain, you need opiates. But what you don't need is to be, what we need to worry about is, the young mommy who goes in, has a C-section, gets on opioids, and 90 days later, she's still on opioids. But some people are at risk for, they feel normal on opioid. They take an opioid for the first time and suddenly they feel normal. So they get the stimulant effect, it's mood elevating, they feel some alleviation of anxiety and depression.
Welcome to the Mindfulness Experience podcast, an official media partner for the Wonderland Miami 2023 conference happening from November the 9th through the 11th. I'm Keith Fiveson, your host for today's episode. We're excited to have a special guest who will share her expertise and insights about an innovative approach to addiction treatment. With her extensive academic background and groundbreaking research, our guest has been making waves in the field of neuroscience and pharmacology. Please welcome Dr. Deborah Nash, professor of neurology and molecular cellular pharmacology at the University of Miami and the founder of Demorex. Welcome to the Mindfulness Experience podcast. Dr. Nash, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm really very excited to have you here. I know you're in Miami and you are a speaker at the Wonderland Conference. And I'm just wondering if you can give us a little bit of background about you and what led you to become interested in this area of addiction treatment and ibogaine.
That is a very long journey, sir.
Okay, we're here. It's okay.
Yeah.
We can do that.
My work with addiction actually was somewhat of a left turn. I'm a neuroscientist, neuropharmacologist, and professor emerita from the University of Miami. I stepped down at the height of the opioid epidemic to dedicate myself fully to addressing the epidemic and deaths and wreckage of fentanyl and opioid epidemic in our country. And this was, after all in, I'm about 30 years vested in this research program.
Wow. And it's been going on for quite a while when we start taking a look at the drugs that are legal versus the drugs that aren't. And it seems to me there's a whole group of wisdom medicines that really do help with neurogenesis, with, really helping individuals to get in touch with the ineffable. I look at them as wisdom medicines, and you're doing some work with ibogaine. So, in this 30-year journey, can you tell us a little bit about what brings you to Wonderland, which is really kind of it's a conference on psychedelics on this year, health and wellness and longevity. So I'm just wondering your spin and what you're, hoping to provide during your session.
I'm very excited to be presenting this year. I've attended the meeting for the last 3 years, and every year they assemble a really stellar group of professionals and really addressing an important area of neuroscience today. What's so exciting for me is that I have been studying the human brain and behavior and what goes wrong with serious mental health disorders that affect the brain from my very beginning years, from years when I was a graduate student. When I did my fellowship in Boston and Harvard Medical School, and when I joined the faculty at the University of Miami, I was working on neurodegeneration. And today, and then my career shifted gears with the cocaine epidemic in Miami-Dade, when, we were all struggling to find a cure, a treatment, anything that could break the cycle of addiction of people who were abusing coke. Miami was hard hit. We were on the front end loading of the cocaine epidemic in Miami-Dade because of our close proximity to the Caribbean and the transshipment through the Bahamian corridor. So this was really, really bad days indeed. And we had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
No medications, no medications. And what do we have today? What do we have today?
Mm.
The FDA has approved methadone,
right,
Suboxone or buprenorphine for medication-assisted therapy, where you're basically substituting one opioid, illicit opioid, for another opioid. Now, this has saved lives and it helped, millions and millions of people. But this is what we have. And, methadone has been around, didn't really go through the regulatory path at the FDA as most drugs do. For withdrawal management, people who want to try to have a transition to abstinence, what are their choices? You can go into detox. You can, do an outpatient detox. Good luck. Most people fail. And they're really, many people do not successfully detox off of opioids. In other words, they can get past the cold turkey syndrome that everyone thinks about. Remember John Lennon's song? That was many, many years ago, cold turkey, screaming pain, the chills, runny eyes, the anxiety, the nausea, the diarrhea, the vomiting. It's pretty horrible.
Serious,
and people have fear of withdrawal. And so, every time you use an opioid and you start to go into early withdrawals, you're constantly remembering. You've conditioned that memory of painful withdrawal. So people are afraid. So what are they going to do? They're going to go back out and score dope again so they can block withdrawals.
Right.
So we keep having this, pattern, this cycle of revolving door of detox and then failed recovery over and over and over and over again. And in the 1990s and early 1992, in the course of my research, and I was a newly funded National Institute on Drug Abuse investigator, NIDA had given me a first grant to study this, phenomenon of cocaine epidemic and cocaine-related sudden deaths. And I was like, damn, I'm going into the medical examiner's office and I'm seeing young people, And I was used to seeing older people who had died from diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And now, working in that context and going in now with young people, and then we had crack babies, and we had, all of the crime in Miami-Dade, and these were the Clinton years. This was General McCaffrey, was in charge of ONDCP, the Office of National Drug Control Policy. So these were difficult days, and there was nothing. And the National Institute on Drug Abuse had a mandate. They said, let's come up with a new molecule. And I had heard serendipitously about Ibogaine. And the first time I heard about it, I thought, what is this? This can't be real. This is snake oil.
So what is Ibogaine? Let's unpack that. Yeah.
So back to what you were talking about at the beginning, this is one of these indole alkaloids from Mother Nature. And indeed, like other plant medicines or other psychedelic molecules that come from Mother Nature, this is an alkaloid. And Mother Nature gives us addicting alkaloids. Opium's an alkaloid, nicotine's an alkaloid, cocaine's an alkaloid. Well, this is Mother Nature's antidote maybe to addiction. And when I hear about this molecule, which is used ritualistically in Africa, much like sacred peyote and the ayahuasca churches in Brazil and whatnot, this is used in Western Equatorial Africa by the Bwiti religion. And it's been around there's over 100 years of ethnobotany, ethnopharmacology behind Ibogaine. So I start to learn about this, and I'm hearing these stories, and I did something, which many scientists wouldn't do, which was I bought a couple of plane tickets, brought a medical colleague with me from my department, and we went to Amsterdam, where there was an underground railroad of addicts helping addicts. And I saw with my own eyes Ibogaine completely break the cycle of addiction for 3 young men. One man was on 100 milligrams of methadone and chipping on benzodiazepine, Xanax, and using a little coke on occasion. little heroin on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
The other person was a musician, very talented young Puerto Rican man, drummer, and he was banging back a lot of heroin. And the third one was the son of an Orthodox rabbi who suffered with attention deficit disorder and was majorly addicted to freebase cocaine. Mm-hmm. And I saw these three young men administered Ibogaine by Howard Lutzoff, who was credited with the seminal discovery of Ibogaine. Himself was an addict and someone who would become addicted to heroin, and made a seminal discovery, and then built a company and got intellectual property around his invention. And he was the one who was running this Underground Railroad. So Howard Lutzoff invited me to go see it. And I saw it with my own eyes. And I thought, my God, what is this? We need to study this not in the underground. This needs to come above ground. This needs to come into an academic medical center.
Right.
I couldn't do any research there because it wasn't the setting. But what I did do is I collected urine. And I brought frozen urine back with me. The men gave me consent to bring back, urine samples. I brought them back. And I had been working with the Dade County Medical Examiner Department, and I had a graduate student who was running my equipment. And I went with my colleagues there, and I handed him the box of that urine, and I said, analyze this urine. There's an active metabolite here. I want us to identify it. And that's how we identified noribogaine, which is an active metabolite of Ibogaine. So now we've got Ibogaine as this lead psychedelic molecule, and we've got an active metabolite, noribogaine, and so begins my journey.
Wow. So, so this started back in 1992, and I understand that back in 1994, you were granted an investigational drug license to research, the impact of Ibogaine and its addiction-stopping capabilities, if you will. And I know that over the years, there's been various types of research ongoing. And I also heard recently about the $42 million grant down in Kentucky to go ahead and conduct research with Ibogaine as well. And I'm just wondering, of Kentucky of all places, you would imagine that, there would be some resistance, but this is gaining traction on both sides of the aisle with Republicans and Democrats. And I'm just wondering, can you share some of the latest findings perhaps in this area of research and what's happened since 1994?
So let me back up a little bit with you,
please.
And fast forward this thing to the Kentucky initiative. When I observed this, I went back to the University of Miami, and I got the higher ups at the medical school there to give us permission to test Ibogaine at the academic medical center. And we would need to go to the FDA to get permission to give Ibogaine to, human subjects first, and then to advance through a regulatory path. Costs many millions of dollars to do clinical trials.
Right.
All right. So we submitted an academic investigator-initiated IND in 1993, and the FDA granted us permission. FDA was very collaborative, very helpful. Indeed, that's what their job is, and that's what they do there. They review your package and they give you feedback. But they gave us feedback, and they gave us permission to go forward. First in Ibogaine veterans who had already taken Ibogaine because they had already been exposed to the drug. Keep in mind that we didn't have a lot of animal data. We didn't have a lot of in vitro data. We didn't know much about the mechanism of action of the drug or the pharmacokinetics or the safety profile or the adverse events. We knew very little because Howard Lutzoff's investigation was open label and not done in the way that the FDA would require. So the FDA was generous with us. But they went cautiously, as they would do. Right. In 1995, I go back to them again, and they give us the full green light. Go ahead. Excellent work, Dr. Mash and team. We allow you to go up to 2, 4, 6, 8 mg per kg, which would be a, quote, psychedelic dose of Ibogaine, and what we thought was the target dose. This was where we wanted to land in terms of being able to break the cycle of addiction. for withdrawal
And
management.
and what was that dose again, please, if you don't mind?
8 milligrams per
8
kilogram.
milligrams.
So that's what the FDA allowed us to advance up to. My problem was I didn't have the money to pay for the clinical trial. And I couldn't get the money to pay for the clinical trial. I could not get the money to pay for the clinical trial. Howard Lutzoff, who controlled the intellectual property, did not have the cash flow or the ability to raise dollars to pay for the study.
And these are millions of dollars that we're
millions of dollars. The University of Miami is not going to pay for it. And anything we did in the University of Miami would benefit Howard Lutzoff's company and his intellectual property, increase the value of his assets. So what would I do? I would do what any academic investigator would do. I would go back to the NIH, to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, who was funding my research, and ask them to pay for the clinical trial, which is what I did. But this is 1995.
1995, wow.
Yes. And so after I had NIDA sitting with me at the table when I went back to the FDA, I invited Open Door, NIDA, to come in because they would be that would be my funding agency. I would need those dollars to collect the data. And basically, long story short, I couldn't fund any grants related to ibogaine. And I've held uninterrupted NIH funding my entire adult life, since 1987 to the present. Now everybody knows my age. So, this was very disheartening for me because we worked so hard to get FDA permission to go, but we couldn't get the dollars. We couldn't get the dollars. So then what I did was, with permission from my university, I went offshore and I set up the first government-approved psychedelic clinic for detoxification of people from cocaine, heroin, methadone, using ibogaine. And we collected a safety and open label efficacy database.
Where'd you do that?
In the Caribbean island, British West Indies, St. Kitts. And the prime minister there, Dr. Denzel Douglas, himself an MD, gave us permission. So we operated there for many years, and I took those data and submitted those data to the FDA. So we kind of kept it alive as long as I could. We also learned more about the molecules, and so the ibogaine and what ibogaine is doing versus noribogaine. And we don't have time today to talk about that, but it's always been an issue, the money. The money. So we started Demorex, my company, to launch noribogaine. Because we thought that noribogaine, not a psychedelic molecule, we know this. Noribogaine is not a hallucinogen. It's not a psychedelic. And we believe that some of the beneficial after effects of ibogaine are mediated by that active metabolite, which forms when you take ibogaine. We know that the psychedelic effects are related to ibogaine. So we could disentangle those two. So our company goes forward. We get new intellectual property on the noribogaine. And another long story short, my company changed up hands, different leadership, like many biotech startups. But in 2017, at the height of the opioid epidemic, I couldn't take it anymore. My heart was broken. And I made a decision to go in, take back control of my company, serve proxies from my shareholders, and reorganize the company. And this time I said, we're bringing ibogaine back. And that led to a reorganization of the company and a joint venture agreement with Thai Life Sciences, which their mission is to take new molecules, new psychedelic related medicines, and advance them to the clinic and advance them to the patient. So now,
what company was that again? Thai Life?
Thai Life Sciences.
Okay.
Symbol ATAI. They're a publicly traded company. And that's our joint venture. So we, working together, Demorex, had this knowledge and safety database, and I'm considered one of the experts on the topic of ibogaine and noribogaine. So together we could forge a clinical development path, and that's what we've been doing. We are ready to launch clinical trials. I believe that we are ready to launch trials in the United States, and we've done some of our work in the UK. Because remember, the other thing is not many psychedelic before MDMA and the just heroic efforts of Rick Doblin. My goodness, Rick Doblin was championing MDMA at the same time I was first going up in front of the FDA. He was right there. And so I'm a huge fan of his, and I admire this man immensely.
Yeah, wow. we really do owe a lot to him and the work he's done, but also to you, Dr. Mesh, and the work that you've done. I know that you've been involved, and you're still doing the work around Ibogaine, and you've been involved with the Healing Transitions Institute for Addiction, and I think that's doing some drug detox work in Cancun, and also with Ibogaine treatments. Do you see Ibogaine being integrated into the mainstream healthcare area, for addiction treatment? And back to that Kentucky funding, that $42 million, could that perhaps lift it up in some way? Maybe we can talk about that.
Certainly. So where do I see this going? Well, I mentioned about the St. Kitts. The program I had in St. Kitts was called the Healing Visions Institute for Addiction Recovery. When I closed that down, I helped train a medical doctor who opened up in Cancun, and the clinic there is called Clear Sky. In the wake of me closing down St. Kitts, Ibogaine clinics were popping up everywhere. Some with medical oversight, some with not. So we've had a real kind of buyer beware situation of these different, but people are desperate and they're going to go for this treatment. And one of the things about Ibogaine is people are on the internet talking about the beneficial effects of Ibogaine, that it saved their lives. I mean, I have the stories of people too. We all do. So there's a lot of, efficacy data, right? There are a lot of people that will stand up and say, Ibogaine saved my life, put my family back together. I became a father again, a mother again, whatever.
Yeah, I've heard upwards of 80% efficacy rates.
Well, I wouldn't give a number to you today.
I mean, I don't know what
I'm
the
a scientist.
numbers are, but but the buzz is so, and of course we know what happens with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I have always said out loud that the numbers and that, I think there's a lot of evidence that the drug works. And I think the scientific and the medical community, and I think many medical doctors would very much welcome the opportunity to prescribe Ibogaine for their patients. And that leads us, why do we have to have Ibogaine in the gray zone? Ibogaine is operating these clinics, some better than others. There's a new one Beyond in Cancun. There are other ones opening up in different parts of the world. But we need to have this done in the United States. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted in 2017. So how do we get back in front of the FDA, have the conversation, and begin to pick up the pace of clinical development? And that's what Kentucky represents. That's what Kentucky represents. Kentucky is so what a day for me. What a great day for me to be invited to present as a scientific expert, as a subject matter expert on this topic, and to have, patients come in and give their own testimonials, and to have people, as you said, on both sides of the aisle. Addiction affects everyone. It doesn't care about your political, Republicans have reached out to me who've lost sons and daughters, people in Congress. I mean, I get calls all the time from people desperate. What can I do? I'm going to lose my son. I'm going to lose my father. Horrible. So Kentucky. So how exciting that they would earmark out of the opioid abatement settlement funds to pick up the pace of clinical development of Ibogaine. And understand that nobody's going to do research with Ibogaine without an FDA-approved IND. We will anyone who wants to do research with Ibogaine will have to put their protocol in front of the FDA and get permission. So if we can't get permission from the FDA, those dollars will not be wasted. But what if we have enough data right now. And what if we can work collaboratively together with key opinion leaders in the state of Kentucky, with treatment providers in the state of Kentucky, with people from the University of Kentucky. There are addiction experts at the University of Kentucky, legendary addiction experts. Why not, put together a Manhattan Project? Fentanyl is a chemical weapon attack on our country.
It is, absolutely.
The deaths due to opioid intoxication are the equivalent of a plane crash a day.
And they're still, giving them out, and freely. You go out and you have some pain. Even the Matthew Broderick Netflix series, I don't know if you've seen it, Painkiller. It's just that process of it's heroin in a pill. That's basically it.
Opioids help when you're in severe pain, acute pain. You've been in a car wreck, coming out of surgery and whatnot. You need opiates. They work.
Right.
But what you don't need is to be, what we need to worry about is, the young mommy who goes in, has a C-section, gets on opioids, and 90 days later, she's still on opioids.
Right. Has a 30-day supply and gets it refilled. And then, you don't need that.
That's our problem.
Education around.
Well, that's the problem. And, I hate opioids. I would never become addicted to them because they're dysphoric for me. I get sick on them. They make me sick. I feel terrible. I don't want them. But some people are at risk for, they feel normal on opioid. They take an opioid for the first time and suddenly they feel normal. So they get the stimulant effect. It's mood elevating. They feel some alleviation of anxiety and depression.
Right.
So we have to remove the stigma of addiction. We have to understand more about who's at risk. And genomic medicine is going to help us with that in the long run, and AI will too. But here's psychedelics. But let me tell you what's even more impressive about these psychedelic molecules is that they turn on, as you said, plasticity windows in the brain. They restore function. They can heal the brain. When I did a many years ago a fundraiser with one of the Bee Gees on Miami Beach.
Oh, great!
And and some band members from the Miami Sound Machine, Gloria Stefan's band, and my kind of marquee that was up, healing the addicted brain, healing inner wounds. And that's Ibogaine. Ibogaine lets you get in touch with your trauma. It lets you understand the wreckage of addiction in your life. It lets you see your life and conduct this life review. And at the same time, it's blocking the withdrawal, the cravings, the desire to run out the door the next day and get high. And it's helping to reset the dysfunctional plasticity that drugs of abuse have hijacked in the brain.
Right.
This is a renaissance.
Well, this
is a fundamental breakthrough in neuroscience. And Ibogaine is one of the tools in the toolbox.
And Kentucky can be the launch pad, as you say, the Manhattan Project for, helping us to go ahead and look at it as a tool to go ahead and combat not only the opioid addiction crisis, but the fentanyl crisis, and really help to reset, reboot, and reframe what addiction is all about.
And giving patients opportunities. Some patients will benefit from being on, methadone or Suboxone. But also transitioning patients to methadone and Suboxone is not an easy journey for the clinician. Ibogaine could be administered in a hospital setting under full medical monitor. And then depending on where that patient is, the clinician can make a judgment and say, oh, all right, you're ready to transition to abstinence and work a program of recovery.
Right. And day by day.
Yeah, and see how you're doing. Or you might want to go on naltrexone, which is an opioid antagonist, which has benefited people. But a lot of people can't detox well enough to go on naltrexone, so they don't stay on naltrexone. And then, the other alternative is to get people to kind of understand their bad behaviors and why their Suboxone is not working effectively. Start to get the neurocognitive plans back engaged in the brain, re-engage the frontal lobe, and then maybe the Suboxone will work better for you too. So you have alternatives. You're giving patients alternatives.
Well, that would be lovely. I'm a KSAC and CARC and have worked in the addiction treatment field. And one of the frustrating areas that I find is the addiction treatment centers seem to be sort of mill zones, where you go in and you go out. And on average, people go in about 7 times. And, it's a profit center, and they don't necessarily, and certainly from a pharmacology viewpoint, the pharmaceutical companies don't necessarily, they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. So there seems to be a real need for a huge shift. And I think that's, coming from the ground up, from, certainly from people who are in the field. I'm also a vet. I work with, the Heroic Hearts Project and dealing with vets who have PTSD and trauma. And of course, pain in that process. And opioids have been a real problem in that particular area. So let's hope that, this work in Kentucky can go ahead and help change things.
And thank you for your service, sir. Our veterans are our most precious members of our society, and we leave them behind. We cannot. And when I see those beautiful young men and women that have gone offshore to take Ibogaine and their journey of recovery, it is the greatest gift to me personally for all my years of dedicated effort to advance this molecule. There can be no greater gift than to see families brought back together and to see men and women be made whole who have given us their service on the battlefield.
Right, and we should be doing that, providing those gifts right here in the USA, not having them go offshore somewhere and not being able to go ahead and manage the quality of care that they might be given. So I certainly hope we can see some of those changes happen, in real time. Let me ask you, I know you're going to be at the Wonderland Conference. And, as I said earlier, the theme of the conference is psychedelics, health, wellness, and longevity. Can you give us maybe a little sneak peek without, revealing, maybe just a little tease, if you will, as to what your session might be about, what your presentation or your talk might be about? And what you might be discussing?
Certainly. I always like to, educate people about Ibogaine because many people don't know about Ibogaine. I mean, we know about mushrooms, we know about psilocybin, we know about ecstasy, we know about MDMA, but we really don't know about Ibogaine. It's amazing to me how many people still don't know about Ibogaine. So the opportunity to educate people about Ibogaine, the history of Ibogaine, the dark side of Ibogaine, which is, Ibogaine being administered in unsafe settings. I've been kind of a watchdog, in that discussion. And then also talking about, how do we advance clinical trials in the US and what it'll mean from a regulatory standpoint, because we need other investigators. We need well-qualified investigators to enter this space. We're grateful for the opportunity to have Atai really take the lead and launch this program in the US, because they've, spent a lot of money to, get this camera ready to present to the FDA. However, we need an expanded pace. We need to go fast. And working with the FDA, how can we come up with a roadmap that can be shared at microdose? And I believe that there's another piece of this, and that's real world evidence. And I have been working with a lead investigator by the name of Dr. Alan Davis at Ohio State University. And Dr. Davis and his team are getting ready to launch the first Ibogaine registry, where people who have gone offshore and taken Ibogaine will be able to log on and share their experience with Ibogaine and reveal some information about the setting where they took the drug, the type of medical care they got while they were under the drug, and how they see the drug benefiting them. So these types of data will not be lost on the FDA. And this is a very, very important initiative. We need patient advocates. We need people in the addiction treatment space. We need the key opinion leaders. We need the scientists and the scholars who understand something about ibogaine, the molecules, to help inform the regulatory discussion. And then we need a joint public-private partnership to take this over the finish line and make this available for the millions of people who will benefit.
Wow. Well, just tell me where to sign on and tell me where to how to get involved. I mean, I'm very excited for the research, and I'm very excited for the effort, because we really do need to see a change, and the patient advocacy is certainly, and to bring that public to go ahead and show it's not just anecdotal. There's real, there are real people and real lives, and we can make a difference right now. So what are we waiting for, right? Let me ask you, your company, your work with Demorex, I know you focus on developing non-opioid treatments for pain and addiction. Can you share perhaps some of the progress and potential impact of the research in addressing the opioid addiction crisis?
Well, we're launching together, as I mentioned, with the TIE, the ibogaine program. The clinical development program is advancing with the leadership of Atai Life Sciences. Demorex is also working on the active metabolite, noribogaine. And we are excited about this, and we will be presenting information in front of the FDA on noribogaine very soon. So stay tuned. There'll be some announcements coming from Demorex.
Okay, great. And when we look at noribogaine versus ibogaine, can you tell us a little bit about the differences and what people might understand and really appreciate, considering resources and so on?
Yes, so that's a great question, and thank you for asking that. Many years ago, when we first described the noribogaine metabolite, I thought, maybe we need to allow patients to have the opportunity to take ibogaine under full medical monitor and have the psychedelic experience, the transformative experience of ibogaine, the medicine itself. And then to be able to follow the ibogaine with noribogaine in a low-dose patch, pill, or a depot formulation to help extend that window of sobriety. And in this way, they actually have a medication that is a non-opioid. Noribogaine has very interesting pharmacology, too much to talk about today, but it's a polypharmacology. So we believe that it's actually helping to reset the addiction circuitry in the brain and bring back the homeostasis. So noribogaine is like a 1-2 punch, and noribogaine has a long half-life. So you can detect noribogaine in the urine out for many weeks after you take ibogaine. So we don't know how long that stays also up in the brain. So this way, we actually have a pharmaceutical preparation of noribogaine that people could just get from their pharmacy. You go to CVS and get low-dose tablets of noribogaine.
Right. So is there, just from my understanding, and certainly perhaps for those who are listening, is it necessary to have ibogaine in order to then look at treatment or look at ongoing support, if you will, with noribogaine as a process to go ahead and continue and work through your addiction issues?
This is a very fundamental question, sir. And I think that there's going to be there is a lot of great science that's coming out right now on this, and there's no doubt that the ibogaine experience, having the ibogaine experience at a dose that gives you the introspection, is extremely important for many patients.
And that was the 8 milligrams that you talked about before.
Yes, 8 to 9 mg per kg free base dose, something in that range. People go up higher than that. We're still trying to target in on that dose, but that's definitely in the range of a psychedelic dose. having that is going to turn on the neuroplasticity in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So how long that neuroplasticity window stays open, we don't completely know.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, having worked in the field,
Mm-hmm.
that addiction's a chronic relapsing disease.
Right.
And what we're doing with the Ibogaine is putting you into remission. Now you have a window of opportunity.
Right, for maintenance. Yeah.
That's right. And
Mm-hmm.
so what's going to be, and I don't think it's going to be one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
you have to, once you are clean from the drugs and you've,
Right.
you know, unwrapped the addiction, then you're going to be able to address, is there trauma? Is there post-traumatic stress disorder?
Right.
Is there major depression? What, you know, what were people self-medicating, anxiety disorder, et cetera? And there will be other molecules that will be coming that, you know, other molecules that in this new, you know, renaissance period. And I believe noribogaine will be one of them.
Right. And what you're really talking about is you're really talking about not a Suboxone or a methadone. You're really talking about a real reset, a real reboot, reset, reframe, and the opportunity for neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, normalization of the individual, the ability to go ahead and activate the changes that they wish to see in their lives. So you move from the setting, into the integration and into the activation. And really what you're doing through this maintenance process, it sounds like, is you're really helping people to show up for their own lives in a way that they would like to show up, you know, in a lucid way that allows them to be empowered in their power. Is that a good recap of what you've said?
That is a brilliant recap.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
All right. Well, it's a very exciting area, and I'm incredibly excited to not only have you on the show, but more importantly, to have you at the Wonderland Conference. I'm wondering, you know, from your view, when you look at, you know, the conference, what do you look forward to most? You've been there 3 times, you say, and I know that you know individuals there, and you know it's a community. Last year we had 3,000 people there, and they're from all walks of life. This year it's expanded out to, as I said, health, wellness, longevity, and psychedelics. And you know, this whole area of being able to reset, reframe the trauma, and being able to then live a life that is about health and wellness and longevity, I think is fantastic. I'm excited to see everyone there. What particular area are you most excited about?
Well, I'm you know, given my background in the aging brain, I'm very interested in learning what's on the cutting edge of longevity and wellness. I'm, you know, very familiar with the depression, trauma, mental health applications. And certainly there'll be new information that'll be shared at Wonderland, but also to get this discussion going around longevity and, you know, successful aging and how these classes of molecules can, you know, be restorative. I mean, look at Paul Stamets' work with his mushroom stack and the work that he's doing around mild cognitive impairment. You know, I'm in that age range. You know, this is this is important stuff. And I've really enjoyed the conference. The conference brings together a very diverse, eclectic group of people. There are lead investigators, you know, key opinion leaders, academic legends who have presented in the past and will be presenting this year, and I'm just extremely proud to call myself one of them.
Oh, that's fantastic. Really, Deborah, Dr. Mash, I really appreciate the opportunity. Lastly, let me just ask you this last question, you know, because our listeners might have listened to the whole conversation that we had, and they may be wondering themselves, or, you know, they may be struggling with addiction or maybe other mental health issues. From your view, how can they really seek support? You know, it sounds like Demorex is involved with some very exciting, you know, research and some announcements that hopefully will, you know, come out soon, and we'll all be able to benefit from them. But how would they get a hold of you, and maybe what can they do to go ahead and seek support in the meantime, from your view?
Very important question. First of all, if you want to learn more about Demorex and be part of our viewers, you can always visit the website demorex.com. And you can always reach me through that website. If you come in through info@Demorex, it immediately comes to my inbox in my computer. So many families and people struggling with addiction do reach out to me through the Demorex website, and we welcome that, and we try to help guide patients and families when we can. Today, the opportunity to take Ibogaine, we've already discussed that. You need to go offshore. What I will say to any patients or family members or support people is that you need to do your homework. If you're going to pick an Ibogaine clinic, ask the right questions, and always speak to your doctor. Speak to your clinician about Ibogaine. It's a good idea, and you want to make sure that you're fit, that you don't have an underlying risk factor or some other process in your heart or your liver that would make you not a good candidate for Ibogaine. So you need to be cleared medically before you seek an Ibogaine treatment. Ibogaine has to be given under full medical monitor. Make sure that if you choose a clinic that you do your homework, ask the fundamental questions, and I'm here available. I'm here to help where I can.
That's excellent advice. So really be the CEO of your own health. Have a good team on board, really make sure that you're looking at all the medical support. Should something go wrong, do risk management and really take a look at what the options are. Don't go into it just willy-nilly just because somebody says I can do this or that.
Correct.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mash. Thank you so much for being on the show, Deborah, and I really do appreciate your insights.
I appreciate you too. Thank you. This was a lively discussion.
It was great. Thank you for listening to the Mindfulness Experience podcast, and a big thank you to our guest, Dr. Deborah Mash, for sharing her expertise and her insights with us. Remember, you can get a 20% discount off the registration for the Wonderland Miami conference using the discount code Mindfulness20. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes on the Mindfulness Experience, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.